because people don't realize that you have to press go live. Oh, here we go. The broadcast is live. It said it right here. That's good.
Okay. Waiting.
What's up, YouTube?
What's up, everybody? Do you see it on YouTube yet?
We're here.
Yes.
All right. What's up, YouTube?
Yes. Okay.
I don't see the first YouTube try.
Let me just refresh it, maybe. Yes, there we go.
All right. Is Twitch up too?
Yep, Twitch is up. Oh, shit.
Sweet. Well, hello, everyone.
Okay, cool.
All right.
All right.
All right. All right. All right. All right, cool. So, hello to everyone out there. Thank you for coming here on time. It's always nice.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody, to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, today on Presidents Suck. Today we're going to be going through the life and times of our longest-serving American president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We're going to talk about his New Deal policies. We're going to talk about his war record. We're going to be drinking beers. And we're going to be answering all your questions in 3 different chats, actually. One on StreamYard, one on YouTube, one on Twitch. So we'll be taking questions about FDR from the audience and all of that as we do this.
We got one already. Happy illegal immigration day to all the Utahns out there.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
No idea what that is in reference to.
Never heard of that before.
That is there. It's been said. It's been thrown out the ether.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
Further ado and talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I want to start today's podcast. Now, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as you may know, is America's longest serving president. He was president from 1933 to 1945. What's up, Emily? Nice to see you. He was our longest serving president, and he died in office. So he was considered by many people at the time and still considered today as America's only, or perhaps America's most prominent dictator. And with that in mind, we're actually going to start the stream off with a little game. And the game is called Who Said It? Palpatine or FDR?
Starting off hot. Everyone, if you don't know the Star Wars story at this point, that's your fault. That's not on us. What's up?
Time out real quick to Ludlow Vert. July 24th is Pioneer Day in Utah. Ludlow, I have a great video on the Mormon March, so you should definitely check that out. And it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's a great story. Okay, so back to the program here. Who said it? FDR or Palpatine? Hey, Adam Cisney. Hey, Silver AG. Hey, Homeless Fire Party. Welcome to the party. That's home full. All right. So how about, Connor, let's go back and forth.
Okay.
And we'll read the quotes in our normal voices.
Okay.
And then you guys in the chat, if you could just write who you think said this quote, Emperor Palpatine or Emperor Roosevelt.
All right. We're going to try and use neutral nouns when referring to like Congress or Republic or whatever might indicate to you the answer. We're not going to give that away. We're going to go through this. All right. You want to start at the top or you want me to start at the top?
I'll give it a start. Okay. So, first quote. Ready, chat? Here we go. I shall ask the Congress for the one remaining instrument to meet the crisis, broad executive power to wage war against the emergency.
The next quote.
Wait, no, we're going to do one at a time.
My bad. I'm so sorry. I went so quickly.
Okay. So, who said it? Palpatine or FDR? I shall ask the Congress for one remaining instrument to meet the crisis, broad executive power. We have 2 saying FDR.
We got 3. We got 4 for FDR.
Wow. You guys know your stuff. That is most certainly FDR.
Yeah.
And since FDR said it, Connor, our resident Palpatine, could you reread that quote in Palpatine's voice?
Yeah. I shall ask the Congress for one remaining instrument to meet the crisis. Broad executive power to wage a war against the emergency.
You kind of sound like Columbo a bit when you said let me one more thing. All right. The next quote, go for it, Connor.
I love democracy. I love the republic. Once this crisis has abated, I will lay down the powers you have given me. That's a pretty neutral one.
What do you think,
Could be
Chad?
anything. Not as quick to answer.
We got Emily admits this is a tough one. It's good to be humble. FDR. Okay, we got one vote for FDR.
Uh-huh. All right.
Pap. Malcolm Bell says Pap. What's up, Malcolm Bell? Thanks for coming today.
Valvoline. She's Palpatine, but not. Okay. So the actual quote is by Palpatine. That is not our president, but it sounds pretty close. Would you like to read it in your FDR voice?
All right. This is how it would sound if FDR said it. I love democracy. I love the republic. Once the crisis has abated, I will lay down the powers you have given me. Okay, there you go. Okay, next quote. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. Thanks, Emily, for that compliment about my FDR voice. I love democracy has become a classic meme, says Silver AG. That is true.
We've been studying FDR for about 3 weeks straight. So Johnny's got a pretty down pat FDR.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot I can show. Yeah, I can show people's quotes and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of fun.
That's cool.
Okay, we got a lot for FDR. That is correct. It's FDR. Go ahead, Connor. Palpatine it.
Okay. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. That's my Palpatine.
Very good.
All right. You want to read one more, or do you want to go through the rest of them as well?
Let's do you pick one more.
All right.
And then maybe we'll come back a little bit later and do it.
Okay. And as my first act with this new authority, I will create a grand army of the people to counter the increasing threats of our enemies. Go for it. Go away. Figure out. Guess your guesses.
That sounds like Lincoln to me. A grand army. I will create a grand army republic to stop the separatism.
Oh, we got a split chat right now. Someone's name is Miss Poopy Spoons, and I've never seen that before.
Okay, we're letting Miss Poopy Spoons have their moment in this. Okay. All right,
so,
who is it?
That is Palpatine. I changed Republic to people, and I changed Separatists to enemies. But that is how very close Palpatine and our 4-term president was.
And as my first act with this new authority, I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats. That's Teddy Roosevelt. Threats. All right. The Teddy Roosevelt will be a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the separatists.
He kind of spoke with a bit of a British accent, mostly because he was an elite and spoke like, the elites do.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about FDR's upbringing, why he was such a weird guy, because he had this weird accent that nobody could place. He was a bit of like a bubble boy, but we'll get into all of that as we get later into the podcast. We're going to start today by talking a little bit about FDR in a context that's a little bit more contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
So, what has made FDR such a, yes, exactly, mid-Atlantic accent. What has made FDR someone that people are talking about again? Well, for one thing, we have a lot of similar crises going on in the country right now as FDR had when he went into office. And there is a strong desire in the country for strong leadership. Some people want strong, like more fascist, strong leadership. Some people want more left communist-ish leadership. And the name of FDR has been invoked many times this year, especially during the political campaign season. And more than anyone else, the beloved Democratic Socialist candidate, Bernie Sanders, has talked about FDR. We're going to watch a short clip of Bernie Sanders talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and then we'll have some questions. So here's Bernie on FDR.
Roosevelt implemented a series of programs.
Turn it up a little.
It can't.
Okay, never mind.
This one's just quiet.
Back to work.
Sorry, guys.
Took them out of dire poverty and restored their faith in government.
Let me just do it back. It's a little. This one came out really quiet. Sorry, everybody. The rest of them are much louder, but just bear with me on this one. So let's listen.
Roosevelt implemented a series of programs that put millions of Americans back to work, took them out of dire poverty, and restored their faith in government. He redefined the relationship of the federal government to the people of our nation. He combated cynicism, fear, and despair. He reinvigorated democracy. He transformed
I don't know about
our
that.
country, and that is exactly what we have to do today. And by the way, everything he proposed, almost every program,
This is true.
every idea he introduced was called socialist.
All right.
Which is true.
So Bernie Sanders invoking the legacy of FDR as he runs for president as a Democratic Socialist, which of course brings up the big question, which is something that's going to come up throughout this podcast. And was Franklin Delano Roosevelt a socialist? What do you think, Connor?
Well, he definitely enacted more socialist policies than have been acted before. But I do have a pretty good quote on his views of government, socialism, and capitalism, if you're interested in hearing, Johnny.
I'm interested in hearing it for sure.
All right, great. Give me, okay. If the capitalist class in this country only understood what I'm up to here, they would understand that I am the best friend they've ever had, because I am reforming this system, the free enterprise system, that is, in ways that will preserve its viability for generations to come. If it weren't for me, there's a possibility the forces of truly radical revolution would gather energy and overturn this system altogether. It's only by reform that the system will survive. So no matter what he was really working at, no matter what he was working towards, he was trying to preserve capitalism. I believe that is a rather honest quote, because I think that he was quite a capitalist. We're going to definitely go into more of FDR's presidency and how he acted as an imperialist or as a almost authoritarian president. I think that he was not interested really fully in socialism and was more interested in people paying attention to him.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. What's interesting about the question of was FDR a socialist? And we're getting a lot of things in the chat here saying no, by no means was he a socialist. I think that's fair. But at the same time, as I read about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I'm also simultaneously reading a book about Joseph Stalin. And I have to say that I do find a lot of similarities. I think there was something in the air at that time period, in the political climate of that time period, that was transnational. That a lot of the leaders of the world were attempting to do something, varying degrees of major social intervention and economic planning. And for the United States to have planning as a fundament of its policy was so out of line with what the United States normally does. And for the 13 or 14 or I guess the 12 years in between the end of President Wilson and when Franklin Roosevelt became the president, there was a rampant laissez-faire atmosphere in the country where especially a culture of investment, of being a kind of a speculator on the stock market really grew and grew and grew. And then there was the crash. And so FDR came into power with the hope of saving American democracy. And in fact, you could even argue that one of his main goals, far from being the president who put everyone on government welfare, people talk about him as like the welfare president. His goal was actually to take people off welfare and get them to work. He wanted to get as many Americans working. And so there is a lot of crossover, especially when you consider that FDR had Henry Wallace, people like Henry Wallace and his crew, his Secretary of Agriculture, who were trying these kind of collectivizing sort of government planning. FDR was also had another thing in common with the Soviet Union. He really loved to build camps.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. So we're talking about America, we're talking about the land of the free and the home of the brave, or whatever the fuck you want to say. While we're talking about Jewish internment camps, concentration camps, which, by the way, FDR couldn't give a fuck about. He couldn't care about the Jewish suffering, couldn't care about genocide, really wasn't interested in it, really didn't motivate him during World War II. He had internment camps of his own. I mean, so 60% of the interned Japanese people were American citizens and born and raised there for the most part. And he had no problem. What was it, 2 years of internment or around there, taking people away from their homes, American citizens, and putting them in a camp away to save America and help the country from their spying or whatever they could have been doing.
We'll get to the internment camps a little bit later in the podcast. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was more FDR's New Deal policies and getting back to work. And that did involve a lot of camps, work camps. So let's talk about a little bit. So let's give a brief sort of background, what the Great Depression was. And I want to give this in the most simple terms possible because I am not an expert on the Great Depression, so I don't want to explain this the wrong way. And B, this isn't, I just want to, keep the ball rolling here. So keep it going. So in the simplest possible terms, the United States had a lot of banks and a lot of investment. So a lot of capital was being thrown into the American capitalist system, which meant that industry was churning out a lot of stuff. It was really pumping a lot of production in the United States going on. The good times would never end. People were personally investing in the stock market to keep that economy going. So a lot of people were playing the investment game. And then there was a stock market crash one day, and suddenly the banks and the investors were no longer, able to fund the economy anymore. And that crippled the economy. It crippled industry. It crippled farming. And it also made people very poor so that they couldn't purchase anything, which meant there was a lot of, it just basically ground the country to a standstill. And a lot of people ended up losing their jobs.
There was a lot going on before FDR was in office. Those who came back from World War I had come expecting that they'd be given the assurances, the insurance, the help health-wise that they had been assured before going into war, and they weren't given that. Not just the minority troops who were treated significantly worse, but many white fighters of World War I had protested in front of Washington, in front of the White House for how they were being treated post-war. There was problems all across the country, signifying that this might be the end of America, that this might not be a system that continues to work. So everything that FDR does, he does in the spirit of, I'm trying to save this land, I'm trying to save these people, which is valiant and is, valid. But many of the ways he goes about doing it is horrifying and horribly wrong. On the train of the economy and talking about socialism versus capitalism, by the end of FDR's rule, the top 200 companies in America owned over 50% of the United States business capital. So they were accounting for over 50% of the business, the top 200 businesses. The only president who was even close to that and close to that growth of the larger business class was Reagan, who was obviously a no good, very bad, terrible president. So anyone who thinks that he was a socialist president, that you can point to a lot of government helping the people, because before Roosevelt, no one looked to the government to help them. However, he might have helped the people a little. He really, really helped those companies who were already controlling their market. He helped them more than anyone else, which is, right, the most capitalist you could possibly be.
And if you look into if you look into people like Karl Marx, how they deconstruct the capitalist system, it cannot function without workers and without consumers, creating the cycle that allows the Ouroboros, that is capitalism, to allow things to keep getting recycled and so that production can continue and capital can expand. And so FDR was assisting in a lot of ways the common people, the working man, all these kinds of things, in part because he was trying to get industry back on its feet again, so that capitalistic production could go back to doing what it did best. And so, a lot of FDR's programs were experimental. And again, this is something he has in common with the Bolsheviks, with Stalin, is that he's experimenting on people. Like he's building lots of camps. He's trying all kinds of untried methods to get the economy rolling again. One thing that FDR did that I thought was really interesting in his attempt to prevent people from being unemployed and therefore end up on the government dole was to basically dilute the definition of a job.
This is very interesting. So he touted himself for all these jobs he created, which Johnny will get into, I'm sure, right after this point of how many jobs he actually created in a sustainable basis. But he was like, I'm the best. I created all these jobs. I created all this money. Everyone should be happy. Johnny, can you please tell the people why that's not true at all?
Well, I mean, okay, if it's the Depression and you have no money and nothing to do, and FDR says, hey, you want to dig a hole and get paid? Well, I mean, that is an improvement on your current situation. So you'd probably be very thankful to FDR, maybe even give him your vote. And that, that's better than where you were. But FDR, basically what he did was he kind of said, hey, let's look into what workers actually do. And wherever workers do something that's too complicated, wherever one person is doing too complicated a thing. Let's like chop that thing up into like 2, 3, or even 4 jobs and hire 4 people to do each step on that. Oh, we got an interesting comment here. FDR and Stalin both oversaw economistic. Oh, you're such a professor, Austin. Economistic political economy. Problem was productivity, win the war. Solution was to get mass of the population to work in war industries and infrastructure. Yes,
very true.
That's something that he learned from Woodrow Wilson, which we're going to talk about his time in Woodrow Wilson.
Terrible.
Everything you need to know about FDR, you can learn just by looking at Woodrow Wilson and FDR's performance in Woodrow Wilson's not cabinet, but almost cabinet. But yeah, FDR tried programs for 8 years to get the economy rolling again. Hardly any of them worked. After 8 years, the economy experienced another crash. No, I mean like after 9 or 10 years, another crash. So everybody felt like whatever FDR didn't work. And then what really ultimately saved the economy was the same thing that saved the economy under Woodrow Wilson, which was war production, war industry. And so, but we will get to that a little bit later when we talk about FDR's lesser talked about legacy as the father of the military industrial complex. There you go.
He is quite the military industrial complex guy.
And he's a complex guy in general, I'd say.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna take that as a segue and run, but you tell me your silly thing that you were gonna say.
No, I was gonna ask. So FDR was not a socialist, but what about Eleanor Roosevelt? Do you think
Eleanor's the fucking bomb, guys? One thing that I have learned personally from studying all these presidents, I don't know, we've done 10-ish at this point. We haven't released all 10, but we've done about 10, I'd say, maybe a little less. It's very apparent that the best presidents are the ones that get the most done are those who are in a partnership with their wife. Being that a lot of women obviously couldn't do much in that day.
Polk.
Exactly. A lot of women couldn't do much in their day. What's up, Scarlet Turtle? They had to find the type of person to help their aspirations and move forward. Eleanor herself was a part of 17 organizations across the country trying to make this a better place to live. She worked with minority groups. She worked with women's groups, obviously. She worked with many people who were disenfranchised from the government, people who didn't believe in what was going on, people who didn't understand how their situation could possibly be as bad as it is while, other people are living so much better in America. She worked tirelessly. There was this thing called the Eleanor Basket where she would every night. So just to catch you up to speed on FDR real quick, he had affairs with a bunch of women. 2 women in particular were all around him all the time. One was his secretary, and one was a woman who he cheated on Eleanor with very early on into their marriage, and was actually there when he died before Eleanor was there. She had been there the whole time, and that meeting was actually arranged by FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt's daughter. So that led to Eleanor and her daughter not speaking for months. So back then 17 orgs was almost like all the orgs. Yeah, that's a good point. There wasn't really a heck of a lot going on, and she really, really showed, the power of the First Lady. There was a women's coalition of some sort trying to promote democracy and liberalism and whatever, and wouldn't allow a black singer to sing the national anthem. Yeah. So
it was Marian Anderson, by the way.
Thank you. She left. So she was only a part of 16 organizations, the Sweet 16, and hosted that woman, Marian Anderson, at the Lincoln Memorial, singing the national anthem there.
So Marian Anderson was invited by Howard University used to invite a singer every year for this big program, and they decided to invite Marian Anderson, who was one of the biggest opera singers in the entire world. She was African American. It was a big deal that there was a black opera singer, as you can imagine, because people have friggin' stereotypes. But
Yeah. And what
Marian Anderson
access were they given to take a life in the arts?
Yeah, exactly. So Marian Anderson was really gifted, and Howard University decided to host her. But at the time, there was no Kennedy Center. There was no Verizon Center, obviously. There were no places for singers.
There was nowhere to go to have a concert ruined by the acoustics in DC, is what Johnny's trying to say.
And the only place that had availability, the only place that had concerts that was big enough was Constitution Hall, owned by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Exactly.
There we go.
Yeah. And the Daughters of the American Revolution were, so woke that they were like, no, we're not a black singer. So Eleanor Roosevelt, she wrote a column every day called My Life, I think it was called. And
yes.
Yeah, and
every
she would
day.
get into politics.
Basically, like her dying day, like really close.
My Day. It was called My Day.
It was called My Day. Yeah.
And she would get into politics sometimes, which was really unusual for a first lady to do publicly. Behind the scenes, fine, but not publicly. So she would write a little bit, and she would often write about race because Franklin Roosevelt, being a Democrat, did not want to touch the race subject lest he risk losing his support in the South. But Eleanor Roosevelt could talk about it, and Franklin could just go, oh, it's just the wife, you can't live with him, you can't live without him. And so it was a kind of brilliant strategy, actually, in a way. So Eleanor would write in her My Day columns, and that when that happened, she wrote, I'm sorry, as a daughter of the American Revolution, I have to step down from the organization because I can't be a part of an organization that excludes Black people from performing, especially someone as talented as Marian Anderson. And she managed to get her a spot performing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial instead.
So one thing really interesting on Eleanor and the race problem. So FDR and Eleanor, I wouldn't say we're on the same page, being that pretty much as soon as she learned about his affairs, she tried to divorce him, and then
no sex ever again from that point on.
Pretty much, yeah.
The books I read said they never, ever had sex again.
I wouldn't be surprised because he fucked a lot of other women, for sure. But she took that as I'm going to do what I want because I know that you can't do anything about it. So I wouldn't say they were on the same page, but they were definitely remotely on the same team. And one of the things that she fought for heavily that FDR didn't fight for, speaking about getting Southern Democrat voters or Southern voters, the problem of lynching. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with lynching. Yeah, what's up, Malcolm? I'm pretty sure we all know which community is more heavily impacted by lynching, and the government wouldn't federally outlaw lynching. FDR would drag his heels on it for months and months and months, even though Eleanor would put it up in her basket, which is Eleanor's basket was memos of her travels and of what she was doing to send to FDR so that he could almost rule on it. He's getting extra information from his wife, and they had to limit it to 5 a day, basically, or around 5 a day. And one of them was lynching, and lynching was never something that he really bit on because he, in order to stay president for 4 terms, made kind of a deal with Southerners saying, listen, I won't go after lynching. If you vote for me, I'll be your guy. I'll help the country again, but I won't do the thing that you obviously need me to do, which is corral the treatment of African Americans in this country and show that that's illegal or immoral or whatever. No matter how hard Eleanor tried, it wasn't done. So by the end of the struggle of her trying to get this through and her trying to get this done, FDR eventually caves in, tries to put lynching as a federal offense on the docket, pushes it, and there is, and I'm not kidding you, a 6-week filibuster led by Southern Democrats, which causes the White House to withdraw this legislation. These are people in his own party. 6 weeks of a filibuster. There are significantly larger problems that we have tried to solve, and we have tried to filibuster, and we have tried to get people's opinions on. I don't know if you've ever seen Bernie passionately talk in the Senate, but most of the time it's to fucking no one. This was a 6 week filibuster on let us kill black people how we'd like to kill them, which is pretty indicative of where America was at the time and how much FDR cared about it.
Where America was at the time, we still have a lynching bill on the Senate floor that has not passed.
Really?
There's currently a bill on the floor on lynching. I think I remember seeing Cory Booker give a speech about it. And I know Rand Paul is like really, really against it.
Named after Ayn Rand, who's a piece of shit asshole as well.
And Paul Giamatti, who's much better. But yeah,
watch Paul Giamatti as John Adams. It's really, really good. It shows that all the founding fathers are pieces of shit, by the way. Anyway, Johnny, you were saying.
So FDR was not willing to do anything about lynching in the country. FDR was also personally racist as well. You have to so FDR got his start as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy under Woodrow Wilson, and he learned a lot of things under Wilson. One of the things that's interesting about FDR's time during Wilson is that he was very well acquainted with A. Mitchell Palmer, and A. Mitchell Palmer was the Attorney General under Woodrow Wilson. During Woodrow Wilson's reign, you had World War I. You had a strong, united effort to build a military and go over to Europe. For Wilson, that meant absolutely no dissent among the people. So Wilson was extremely strict with the press and was throwing people in jail, especially socialists, African-American civil rights leaders, gays, whoever fit the profile of undesirable ended up in jail. Suffragists. And A. Mitchell Palmer was the guy doing all of it. Now, A. Mitchell Palmer had a lieutenant named J. Edgar Hoover. And FDR was friends with these guys and conferred with them a lot and learned about the importance of internal intelligence within your own country from these people who would end up founding the FBI. In fact, during Wilson's presidency, Franklin Roosevelt lived in DuPont Circle across the street. I do have more respect for Ayn Rand than Rand Paul, Esper Fitzroy, for sure. And that's like this much more. Anyway, in case you can't see that comment there. So FDR lived on DuPont Circle during the Wilson administration when he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He lived across the street from A.G. Palmer. Well, an Italian, a guy like him, one of my ancestors, showed up at Palmer's home with a bomb and attempted to kill the Attorney General, but he messed up and he tripped and he ended up blowing himself up. But it was a huge bomb, and FDR ran out into the street. This was before the polio, and he helped Mitchell Palmer kind of get up. And having witnessed this anarchist attack had a profound effect on FDR and what he saw as like the necessity of a security state, the necessity of what would become the FBI. And so FDR participate. Actually, should we bring up that article?
Yes. We got a few cool things to show you, cats.
Where is that article?
I'm really excited to show you guys the
it's not
on FDR. That's really exciting. Can't wait to get to that part of this.
Yeah. Where's the article on gays?
There's a few. Just like the Germans, FDR didn't care for the blacks, the gays, and the gay. I was about to say the gays again. The blacks and the gays,
and the Jews.
Those who were Jews.
Okay, we'll put the gays stuff aside for a second. Although, me, I don't really like to do that all the time, but just for now, because I do know about the Jewish stuff. FDR believed that that Jewish populations should be spread out. He had this weird anti-Semitic belief that like if you had too many Jews in a place, it would cause problems.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
So when he was governor of New York, he actually enacted certain policies to keep the Jewish population from getting out of control, which is really messed up.
With 4 terms, right, guys? Let's elect him to 4 terms. Yeah, no.
So, but the other thing that FDR learned under Wilson was the power of the military-industrial complex to get the United States out of an economic recession, or in his case, a depression. Wilson, as president, had a recession. War production during World War I saved the country from that recession, and Wilson was able to get elected to a second term. So,
wait, what were you just talking about? Were you talking about giving businesses government contracts? Is that what you're just saying?
I'm just talking about production in general.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
businesses.
Just to connect that to what I was saying earlier before, that's what FDR did to the largest companies in the country, which is on the capitalist point that I was saying before. He gave a lot of government contracts to the same companies so that they could retain their power. Anyway, you were saying.
So war production saved the economy under Wilson. And as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, FDR was integral in convincing the administration to build warships, weapons, go, military. FDR has the legacy that Bernie Sanders invokes of being the socialist or the socialist adjacent president. But there's another side of his legacy that we don't often see. And it's a side that Bernie Sanders actually shares. So we're going to play a quick clip of Bernie Sanders, and then we're going to switch to FDR. So here's Bernie Sanders in, I believe, 1998 on the Senate floor, giving his prescription of what the United States should do about Kosovo. Let's listen.
Mr. Speaker, my assessment of the situation at the present moment is that Mr. Milosevic is a war criminal, and that ethnic cleansing, mass murder, rape, and the forced evacuation of hundreds of thousands of innocent people from their homes is unacceptable and cannot be ignored. Sadly, because Mr. Milosevic has negotiated agreements which he has then ignored, I have supported the NATO bombings of military targets. I believe that the Serb military and police must be withdrawn from Kosovo, that the hundreds of thousands of people uprooted from their homes must be allowed to return, that Kosovo must be given some kind of self-rule, and that an international peacekeeping force should be established to maintain order. Mr. Speaker, I believe we strive as hard as we possibly can to find an alternative between doing nothing and allowing ethnic cleansing to continue, and the continuation of a war which will certainly result in terrible destruction, large numbers of casualties, and the expenditure of great sums of money.
Excuse me, I have a favor to ask you.
So
lighting it up in the chat.
Yeah, so that's something that you don't normally see when it comes to Bernie Sanders. But let's check out this video now and see how much they line up.
This is a talk on national security.
Quick background on this clip. This was 1940, a month after FDR was elected to a third term. Having tried experimental New Deal policies to save capitalism, FDR found that things weren't really working out. He ran in 1940 for president and told American people, none of your boys will die in a foreign war.
I don't know.
1 month later.
I don't know if everybody caught that, because all of my things just loaded and I just heard you. And
FDR said on the campaign trail for his third term that none of your boys will die in a foreign war.
Someone just put something in. I am once again asking you to bomb Kosovo.
All right. So he said, none of your boys will die in a foreign war. And 1 month after winning election, just like his guru, Woodrow Wilson, who said, he kept us out of war. 1 month later, this speech was given, the Arsenal for Democracy speech was given by FDR. Let's listen.
Because the nub of the whole purpose of your president is to keep you now and your children later and your grandchildren much later out of a last-ditch war for the preservation of American independence. In view of the nature of this undeniable threat, it can be asserted properly and categorically that the United States has no right or reason to encourage talk of peace until the day shall come when there is a clear intention on the part of the aggressor nations to abandon all thought of dominating or conquering the world. Frankly and definitely, there is danger ahead. Danger against which we must prepare. But we well know that we cannot escape danger or the fear of it by crawling into bed and pulling the covers over our heads.
There's a little more, but let's just stop there for a second. What do you guys think? What do you think in the chat? What do you think of FDR's speaking style?
Was it insanely good for a president? The fact that he could easily he has such a good radio voice, a good microphone voice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, FDR came right on time because his voice was made for the radio, and the radio was more accessible under Franklin Roosevelt than any previous president. And he also has this like very down to earth, right? Like he's talking about Woodrow Wilson would talk about international politics. Very good radio voice, incredible voice, chillest of all voices. What he said more, which he said more chill shit though. Yeah. He did not say chill shit, but
no, he's a piece of shit.
Anyway. A lot of foreboding. But the thing is that I would argue that there's never been a president who could speak as well as FDR, because he would take these really complicated issues like war. Woodrow Wilson, when he would talk about war, he would construct these page-long sentences with interlocking clauses and very big words to like say, really complicated breakdowns of what was going on. And FDR would just be like, we cannot crawl back under the covers.
Pretty much exactly sounds like him.
And also, huge Churchill fan, right? Him and Churchill, like this, right? So there's a lot of it's very Churchillian, which is a word makes me cringe, but whatever. Okay.
I got a message saying we wouldn't have world peace if it wasn't for Woodrow Wilson.
We have world peace? Okay. I didn't realize we had world peace. Guys, world peace achieved. Unlocked. All right. Let's continue this.
Germany has said that she was occupying Belgium to save the Belgians from the British.
Yeah, right. That's his right face.
Would she hesitate then to say to any South American country, we are occupying you to protect you from aggression by the United States?
I do want to say
that wish that he would Churchill.
It is weird to hear him say that real quick. We didn't have world peace after Wilson, we had World War II. That's correct. It is interesting to hear him say I got a little distracted there. What did he say? Oh, he's talking about Germans invading South America. He's talking about Germans invading South America, which sounds crazy, but the Germans did get during World War I. They actually possibly colluded with the Mexicans, and the other thing is like, his cousin Teddy Roosevelt had a tussle with the Germans over Venezuela. So the German. You don't realize this because they don't teach it in history books very much, but the Germans were over here in the Western Hemisphere quite a lot, especially in the 20th century and in the late 19th century. So that wasn't so outrageous to think that the Germans would come over to the Western Hemisphere.
To protect you from aggression by the United States. Belgium is being used as an invasion base against Britain, now fighting for its life. And any South American country in Nazi hands would always constitute a jumping off place for German attack on.
The only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. We gonna give you something you can't take off.
Any one of the other republics of this hemisphere. We think of Hawaii as an outpost of defense in the Pacific. Yet, the Azores are closer to our shores in the Atlantic than Hawaii is on the other side. There are those who say that the Axis powers would never have any desire to attack the Western Hemisphere. This is the same dangerous form of wishful thinking which has destroyed the powers of resistance of so many conquered peoples. Let us no longer blind ourselves to the undeniable fact that the evil forces which have crushed and undermined and corrupted so many others are already within our own gates. Your cases are aiding and abetting the work of these agents. I do not charge these American citizens with being.
Oh, he talks about sedition here a lot.
But I do charge them with doing exactly the kind of work that the dictators want done in the United States.
Connor, do you know anything about this?
Pearl Harbor being an inside job? No. But I do have a little something. So on Pearl Harbor, actually, that was a cleaning day. The day of Pearl Harbor was actually a cleaning day for the boats. So most of the people, most of the people that were supposed to be on base weren't there. There were definitely deaths. There were definitely people injured. But there could have been like a lot of death, a lot of problems, and a lot of destruction for not only our people, but also our ships. And there wasn't. That was a day where many ships had come in to clean, and most people were not on the ships in any capacity, really. So take that information for how you'd like it.
I mean, he could have done, if he really wanted to get into the war, he could have done a James K. Polk and just sort of like put a couple of American ships really close to Japan in an area that was a little bit like, who does this belong to? And then when Japan attacked, he could have been like, America was viciously attacked by the Empire of Japan. But instead, he like sacrificed a lot of important ships. I mean, the attack was brutal, and it didn't just take place in Hawaii, which was not a state at the time. So
it was our outpost, as FDR described.
They attacked the empire. They didn't attack the actual technical United States. They attacked the American empire. And yes, many people did believe it was an inside job. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories about the inside job of Pearl Harbor came out at almost immediately after it happened, and many things were written about it in subsequent years, books. But most scholars agree, and you could say maybe they're paid to agree, which is ridiculous, that it wasn't.
Well,
an inside
didn't you all
job.
get your like George Soros checks? I was paid to say certain things on this podcast.
Yeah, how do you think I can afford this row house in DC?
Yeah. By the way, we're totally not in the same house, but
we're literally in the same house.
Different floors.
We could be doing this in the same room, but we think this looks better. Let's see. Let's read through a little bit of the comments here. We pulled out from the Philippines. Yeah, that's right. We had to retake the Philippines. Yeah. So we actually got attacked in more than just Hawaii. But Hawaii was close enough, and there was enough Americans there that he emphasized the attack on Hawaii. It was also a particularly brutal attack. He emphasized that to say like we were attacked, America was attacked, when Hawaii was actually under control of the United States.
10-year-old. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's what I was laughing at.
10-year-old George Soros was paying. Yeah, exactly. No, wasn't he
crisis actors
Nazis at that point? So, okay. So what happens after the Arsenal of Democracy speech? FDR starts a program. Do you know what program I'm referring to, Connor?
Are we talking about the NRA?
No, we're talking about Lend-Lease.
Oh, excuse
talk about NRA
me.
too.
I'm so sorry. I was so past. I was typing a response to Scarlet Turtle, who was asking if we could do a show in the same room. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know how to best show both of us in the same room.
Dorian, nice.
Lend-Lease was a really interesting program by FDR. So for months and months and months, if not a year or longer, before the U.S. got into World War II, FDR had been privately conversing with Churchill. Also, fun fact, there was a guy named Tyler Kent who was intercepting all of these messages, who was part of the American isolationists and was basically trying to get fuck over FDR so that America couldn't get into the war. However, like just at the right time, they like caught him or some shit. I don't know. Doesn't really matter because nothing really happened. But Lend-Lease was a brilliant / horrifying maneuver by FDR to get us into World War II. As I'm sure most people know, the president cannot get the U.S. into a war without congressional consent. Well, at this time, we were still very much not in war. We hadn't even enacted our draft, which, by the way, when the draft was enacted, was still a peacetime draft. We were not yet in war. So at this time, Roosevelt, who, like I said, had been in private conversations with Churchill for months, had lended and leased American ships.
Lent,
yeah, thanks. Had lent and leased ships and aircrafts and aircraft carriers, of course, to England without needing congressional support because there wasn't any sale and there wasn't really a final deal. So to say, it was leasing and allowing others to borrow and pay us back for the equipment later. So that was how FDR first got us into World War II. Now, again, our people weren't there, but we were already starting to trade and make money off of World War II, therefore kind of entangling us in the same. We wanted the same things as specifically England, which we'll see later in World War II, but England specifically, we are heavily tied to during World War II.
Right. And I think that FDR, he was actually really strongly opposed to fascism, even though he, dabbled in it in a lot of ways. And America has always been arguably fascism has been a big part of America. Big part. We may not have had we may have not have had somebody as direct and overt as a Hitler, but we've had plenty of Hitler adjacent policies and people in our country's history. So he really saw that fascism was sort of like basically the kind of thing America does, but out of control and unstoppable, and also not American, right? It's Germany. It's not America doing it. So we have to stop Germany from doing the expansion, from trying to make Germany great again.
Yeah.
Because, from trying to make Europe great again, because we can't have Germany, a Germany of that kind. And the one thing that he and Stalin did agree on is that the fascists were untenable, unpalatable, just intolerable because they did not respect treaties. They were totally expansionist. And so Roosevelt had this, did not really like them very much and thought they needed to be stopped. And so he starts the Lend-Lease program to get things sort of rolling and get America used to the idea, first of all, that the economy is getting better because we're producing and selling to Europe. Yay, that's good. And maybe we might go over there and join that war ourselves and position ourselves to complete what Woodrow Wilson had in mind during World War I, which was for America to become the big country that ruled the world. Now FDR will complete what Woodrow Wilson tried to do. And so he gets the opportunity thanks to, did you have something to say, Connor? Important?
I was just going to say,
right
oh, that's a really good, Charles Lindbergh was a piece of shit. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that during his re-election campaign, FDR was promising the people that we will stay isolationist,
Right.
and we will stay away, and he would never get us into a war. Literally, it was a read my lips, no new taxes. In a few months, we're going to have new taxes, just like George Bush.
So Pearl Harbor happens, and FDR gets everything he needs to declare the war he's been dying to declare. So let's watch FDR's speech here.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
By the way, did you hear those rebel yells at the beginning? Yeah! That's the rebel yell.
Woo!
That's the fucking rebel yell, dude. I'm serious. And according to Gore Vidal, when Woodrow Wilson declared war on Germany, they were doing the same shit. They were shouting, "Yeah!"
Is that a good segue into the Goebbels bit?
It
Are we not there yet?
I did want to do the whole that was what it was like to. This is what it was like to be white in America on December 7th, right? Like it was, woo, we're going to war.
Yeah. It should be said. This is a good spot to say it real quick. Any of the help that FDR gave to the American citizens almost exclusively went to white men. Very few people of color got any government assistance or any government jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So FDR gives this great speech. There's this great patriotic fever. Of course, a lot of, we have to say, of course, a lot of white people are going to be going to war, which is terrible. So we're not trying to say white people had everything going great for them during this period. They had a lot of struggles too.
Speaking of, can I tell you?
Oh,
no, you go. You say your thing.
I keep trying to say. I'm trying so hard to queue up this one video.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know. I don't want to commandeer the podcast and be like, it has to be like this. So if you had some kind of, I'm just gonna let you speak.
We were just talking about the amount of people that were going into war, and I just wanted to give you some war statistics.
Okay, yeah, give us the statistics. That'd be good.
So 20% of there's 50 million men in America at the time. 20% of them from ages 18 to 45 were selected in the draft. So there's about 12 million people, 12 million men that were selected in the draft. That was 9%.
Real quick.
Yeah.
For reference, I went to college at Florida State, and 20% of our student body were in fraternities or sororities, and it literally felt like everyone I met was in a fraternity or sorority. So 20% is a huge number.
That's 1 in 5 people. That's a constant amount of people that you're talking to are those people. Mm-hmm. So that was the amount of people that were sent into the war. So a real fun thing, the draft was actually called the Selective Training and Service Act, even though they were selected to go. They weren't allowed to select themselves whether or not they went, because 5,000 to 6,000 men were jailed for either a failure to register or a failure to serve. And almost all of those people were Jehovah's Witnesses, which I'm not going to tell you that I, care that much or defend that much to the Jehovah's Witness community, but Donald Glover was a Jehovah's Witness. Anyway, so that was the amount of people. In a peacetime draft, we took 9% of the population, 20% of all men, and threw them in another country to go against their will. Anyway, Johnny, you were setting up a clip.
Okay, so first of all, we're former Confederate veterans or sympathizers in favor of going to war with Germany. I would say, I don't know, but I would imagine that unless they were isolationists, that they were, because they were pro-American first. And don't forget, a lot of Germans fought in the Union Army against them. So, I don't know what their feelings were about Germany, but I mean, I think they were just excited for the idea of America going to war and fighting somebody. So I don't think it really factored in. It wasn't a war against slavery. So, I mean, that probably helped grease the wheels for them a little bit. But December 7th, 1941, date which will live in infamy. A proud moment for American history, but it was a tough moment for people of Japanese ancestry.
Yeah, let's talk about them.
Let's watch this clip real quick.
26.
This is my grammar school years here.
I'm gonna pee real quick.
Just south of Los Angeles in 1926. It's where his immigrant parents had settled after leaving Japan in search of a better life. And while Imamura, who likes to be called Min, grew up during the Great Depression, he led what sounds very much like an all-American life.
I had a dog, and I had a shotgun, and went rabbit hunting, and it was. I think it was the nicest time of life for me.
But the idyllic youth that Min remembers came to a very sudden end in his mid-teens. On December 7th, 1941, Minoru Imamura was a high school sophomore and a few weeks shy of turning 16. 2 months later, President Roosevelt issued an executive order calling for all Japanese Americans to be relocated to internment camps.
My dad worked so hard. He put his energy in his farming, and he decided to buy 50 acres. He lost everything.
If newspapers wanted a picture, they would supply a picture. Generally, they would be pictures that showed positive aspects of life in the camps. They did not document the dust storms, the extreme cold, the uninsulated conditions.
Of course they didn't.
They did not show the horse stalls that entire families were living in.
Beginning in 1942, when families were
These were Americans, don't
began
forget.
selling off their possessions. They were transported by trucks and trains
Not that it
to
should matter,
assembly
but-
camps where they were processed.
They're human beings.
The family was later transferred to the internment camp in Grenada, Colorado, one of 10 such facilities. It's where Min finished high school 2 years later, and in a supreme case of irony, he was then drafted into the Army.
There were the 2 questionnaires: if you'll be loyal to the United States, and if you are drafted, would you serve? And on the 2 question, I've answered yes, yes.
But by the time he reached Europe, the war had ended. Back home, the last of the internment camps would not close until 1946.
So here we admit a wrong.
In 1988,
Look who's
President
here.
Ronald Reagan
Look at
signed
this
a
piece of
law
shit.
granting reparations to Japanese Americans.
He gave
who had been interned.
reparations.
Each survivor
is
received
good.
$20,000. Among them were Min Imamura and his wife Mary, whom he met at the Grenada internment camp.
So
Here's a few $1,000s for your troubles. Sorry for ruining your life for a few years.
I mean, can anyone think? Oh no, Reagan did something good. Can anyone think of a
Every
reparations?
president has done something good and
Yeah.
many things bad.
Yeah, can anyone think of an example of a president giving reparations to people of an ethnic group who were mistreated? That's amazing, actually, to think about that. To think that that was Ronald Reagan of all people who did that.
I just want to give some money to some people. That was more.
And especially because Ronald Reagan, although he was like the killer of the New Deal, was a huge. He was an FDR Democrat. He got involved in politics through FDR. He loved FDR. He said, "We have a rendezvous with destiny," which was, that was FDR's phrase. Okay, so Austin Gallus put up a good quote. Adolph Reed, always there to rain on our everything's racist parade, because Adolph Reed is a smart guy. The New Deal coalition benefited Black people too, and that is true. Yeah, of course, we always want to because we're presidents suck.
Okay.
We're trying to shit
Okay.
on the president.
But
We should-
also, like,
Okay,
let's
talk
talk about some plans. Let's talk about the New Deal. There's 2 New Deals. The first New Deal sucked ass. The second New Deal was okay. Let's talk about just real quick the crops, the farmers. Farmers had shit, Langdon. I have no idea what that says. Maybe Johnny knows.
I can't read kanji. No, not kanji. What's that called? katakana. I don't read katakana.
But you
very
know
well.
what katagan is. Anyway, so what the fuck was I just talking about?
The second New Deal.
Thank you. So the farmers themselves were given subsidies. So everyone knows slash and burn. Everyone knows that the farmers were paid to slash and burn, to burn their crops and slash their animals, their livestock.
Yeah.
6 million pigs on its own were slaughtered in this. Now, while this was happening, all the money that was being paid to the farm
reparations
was the money was being given to the farm owners, which means that land leasers and sharecroppers weren't given any of the profits. So most of those were the minorities who weren't able to own land. So if you were fortunate enough to own the land, you were paid for killing your crops and killing your animals, while people with no land, no money, and no fucking food during the Great Goddamn Depression weren't given any of these things. They could have been given, some of the pigs, some of the cattle, some of the livestock in any way. They could have been given some of those crops, but instead, those who were in need, those who didn't have, were again not paid attention to by the federal government. So yes, there definitely were minorities who were helped by FDR, but by and large, not even close. The white people were helped significantly more by FDR and barely by those who needed help.
I can hear Caleb Malpin calling you a Malthusian just for mentioning overproduction. And that's a very inside YouTube joke. But okay, so now we know that FDR went to war against fascism. We know that one thing a lot of people who support Antifa love to do is post pictures of American soldiers in Europe and say, I support Antifa, like this is Antifa, and show American soldiers. I always cringe when I see that because I'm like, those are not Antifa. And to give you a sense of how close the FDR New Deal coalition was in spirit to what was going on in Germany. We're gonna finally hit that quote that Connor has been waiting for. Everyone, it's gonna start with FDR's inauguration address, and then it's gonna show. No, actually, I think it goes straight into. Oh, we'll see. But this is a famous German at the time.
That's a good point made by Sebastian.
Yeah, go ahead, say it.
Sorry. I do think that the war hysteria allowed some ethnic groups to assimilate as white after the victory. Yes, that is true. The Irish,
Italians,
the Italians, and some Jews were allowed to become white at that time. Johnny, play that clip.
All right. Here's a famous German talking about FDR's New Deal.
Especially Joseph Goebbels.
Joseph Goebbels.
Wir betrachten die wirtschaftliche Entwicklung in Amerika mit dem allergrößten positiven Interesse. Und wir sind aus der festen Überzeugung, dass Präsident Roosevelt und seine Berater auf dem richtigen Wege sind. Es handelt sich in der Tat um das größte wirtschaftliche und soziale Problem aller Zeiten. Die vielen Millionen Arbeitslosen, die ihre Plätze an den Maschinen und in den Kontoren verloren haben, wieder an ihre alten Arbeitsstellen zurückzuführen. Das kann nicht allein der privaten Initiative überlassen werden. Ausschlaggebend ist, dass die öffentliche Hand mit positiven Maßnahmen eingreift.
Oof.
You know you're doing a bad job when Joseph fucking Goebbels says this is the guy we're paying attention to. I like what he's doing. It's some good stuff. I wish I could get a lesson or two from FDR. What a piece of shit, anyway. What are you gonna say?
I don't blame Bernie Sanders for being like, I'm going to be the new FDR. But it very much relies on his complete historical ignorance about FDR to make that, to do that. And I mean, campaigns rely on ignorance. So again, I don't blame Bernie for doing it, but it's like,
speaking about ignorance, Obama campaigned on change twice. Anyway,
Obama didn't even change his socks.
Do you have something set up, or would you like to talk about the intangibles kind of more over of FDR and kind of what he was doing or not doing at the time?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more on New Deal if people are interested, maybe. I know we wanted to get into some of the specific New Deal programs that he did.
Does anyone have any questions? Anyone have anything that you want to know a little bit more about at the hour and 15-minute mark?
I got a Jerry curl. How do you like it?
Oh, yeah. How do you guys like my hair? I will be cutting it eventually, but right now I got a fro.
Yeah.
All right. This is mostly just New Deal healthcare. Yeah. Sort of. He took kids out of factories. That was the most healthcare he gave.
Yeah, let's talk about maybe either the WPA or we should talk about the NRA.
We should definitely talk about the NRA. Well, can you intro the NRA clip with the Founding Fathers?
Can you tell us a little bit about the NRA first, so the
NRA was the National Recovery Act. It has nothing to do with rifles and shouldn't have anything to do with rifles. But those are my personal opinions.
Unless you get out of line at the work camp.
Yeah, internment. So
a lot of camps.
Yeah,
under
lots
FDR.
of fucking camps.
Camp guy. He was really the camp director of the United States for those 12 years.
Yeah, especially like if he had a favorite Childish Gambino album, it would be Camp by Childish Gambino.
All right.
I thought it said Camp somewhere. I'm sorry. Anyway,
you just can't leave Donald Glover home.
I really can't. So we were talking about the NRA. So the NRA was the National Recovery Act, and it was one of the biggest parts of FDR's New Deal. It was part of the programs that he thought were going to help affect people in America the most and help them recover from what was going on. And what he really wanted to do was get as many people back to work as possible. To solve the current economic crisis. Is there anything else that you really wanted me to talk about before getting into the NRA?
Well, it kind of goes into that whole idea we were talking about earlier about the WPA, like all these programs, Works Progress Administration. One thing that FDR did that was really smart was use the opportunity to build infrastructure, which was something that he shared in common with Bernie Sanders. It was also something he shared in common with Trump, although Trump, as far as I know, really hasn't done anything on it. Trump did say, we will rebuild crumbling infrastructure. It's weird how Bernie and Trump are so close. And it's weird how fascists, many of them were socialists before they became fascists.
Well,
they used socialist rhetoric like Goebbels did. So that's why you can't take the Goebbels thing too seriously, because Goebbels is saying, he's trying to appeal to the working people. Like the Nazis used socialist rhetoric to try to say, hey, you like all that socialist stuff, right? Yeah, we do too. But we have a better solution than communism. It's called fascism. Come hang out.
One thing on that point is that, and we're about to get into a good clip that describes that, but to intro that clip a little bit more, FDR is the fucking king of propaganda. I personally did a 25-page paper in order to graduate from college on the fireside chats, and it is a direct worm in America's ear going, it's all okay. I got this. It's the best. We're doing great on the front lines. We're doing great in America. Nationalistic, we're doing great. In the world, we're doing great. Listen to me. I'm FDR. I got you safe and sound.
We are great again. Okay, before I play the NRA clip, I just want to answer this question. Mm-hmm. When Southern Democrats were supporting FDR, they were basically on board with the New Deal. They weren't fiscal conservatives. No, they weren't. That switch really took place because of Ronald Reagan in a lot of ways. He was the one who finalized that switch. But racist Southern Democrats have a long tradition of lifting up the poor white man. It goes all the way back to Andrew Jackson, whose entire pitch to the American people was, hey, are you a poor white farmer who doesn't have much money to your name and isn't an aristocrat? Well, I was a poor white, nobody too. And I will become president, kick all the Indians out of whatever land you want, and allow you to go there. You can become a slaveholder too. So, there is a populism element, they're not fiscal conservatives until much later when capitalism really takes its place. But under FDR, you have a lot of these people in the South who support the New Deal, who support what FDR is doing, especially because most of it's segregated, and FDR isn't messing with segregation, so they're all on board. All right, let's check out this NRA propaganda.
Johnny's FDR voice is really good.
Let me just remove that quote. Okay, here we go.
This is great, guys. Get ready for this shit.
The poor boy has fallen asleep.
I love this.
Hold on. Chat, can you name the 3 presidents? Can you name the 3 presidents here pictured?
What would Chris Wallace ask FDR? Chris Wallace would ask FDR if he's trying to stay Supreme Chancellor of America.
Can you imagine FDR sweating in the Rose Garden? Lincoln, Washington, Coolidge, Lincoln, Wilson, Adams. It's actually Lincoln, Wilson, and George Washington. Okay.
Y'all were close.
Yeah. 3 dumpster fire presidents.
He's been writing a song for the NRA.
Cool.
Yeah, but he was a dumpster fire for most of his reign.
Okay. Things are getting better every day. Well, Abe, it looks though we can stop worrying about our country. President Roosevelt has it right again.
America saved.
A plan of action and a man with the courage to put it through. There isn't a person in America who won't profit by the National Recovery Administration. If every man, woman, and child will do his part, you can always depend upon America.
Yeah, not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Did I hear someone mention NRA? Oh, I didn't realize who you were. You see, I've just been writing a patriotic song. I must have fallen asleep.
Don't excuse yourself, my boy.
His own music puts himself to sleep.
In fact, I've been watching everything that has happened in this country for over 157 years.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
I've seen it grow from 13 states to the greatest and strongest country in the world. And now through the National Recovery Administration, the NRA, it is striving forward to finer and better things.
It's not.
The NRA is a great thing for America.
It didn't. It wasn't.
Just like thousands of others.
Yeah.
I hardly know exactly how it operates.
That's a good question.
It, to me, it might give me an idea for my song.
Just what do you want to know?
What is the idea behind the NRA? What'll it do?
It will end unemployment and restore the purchasing power of the American people, the thing this country has been trying to do for many years.
Oh, great. Tell me.
It'll restore the purchasing power of Americans. That's an interesting
What
thought.
does that even mean?
It means people will be able, because in the 1920s, people could buy stuff. And then all of a sudden, the Depression.
Capitalism again.
Yeah, he's saying people will be able to buy stuff.
Consumerism, materialistic.
President Roosevelt has asked each employer to split up existing work to give more people jobs and see to it that every man has a living wage. Yes, a man and every man's job. I live to see the freeing
I don't
of
know
the
if they play
slaves.
these movies.
But this is a step toward the freeing of the slaves at the sweatshops, eliminating child labor, and giving the toilers a chance to enjoy the beauty.
Eliminating child labor was not a big priority for the Lincoln administration, but Wilson did a lot against child labor, and FDR passed the most comprehensive anti-child labor law in the history of the country. And it's fair to say that he cared about children working, but it's also fair to say that he was passing the law because he wanted to put adult men back to work. And he wanted to stop companies from using children because it was causing unemployment amongst adult men. So it was a measure to save capitalism in particular. But go ahead.
Just so you all can get this, can put this in a good spot, because everyone learned about this in elementary and middle school. This was a whole 30 years after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory disaster. So that fire, all those kids dying and burning with no ventilation and no real health in their area or in their place of work, that's 30 years before FDR does a thing about it. Obviously, he wasn't president the whole time.
I was afraid of copyright, so I made it fuck. To the sunnier day, the road is open again. This is so commie. Look at this. This is like Soviet Union. This is so Stalinist.
He is the master of propaganda.
Yeah.
He really is America's best president for getting its people to be all on the same shitty page.
This is straight up Stalinist. This is so Stalin. I love it.
Do you think that Stalin copied off of FDR's homework, or FDR copied off of Stalin's homework?
I think Stalin was watching and taking some notes, but I
love this.
I also think that USA. Okay. But I also think that there were people. Maybe FDR himself wasn't looking to Stalin, but I do think there were people in the administration who were like, "Hey, what's going on over there in the Soviet Union? Let's try some of that stuff." And many of those people, if you watch our Nixon episode, you'll see what happened to those people. they got fucking purged after World War II for having anything to do with the Soviet Union. But yeah.
Don't be communist sympathetic. Definitely not around McCarthy. Get your fucking ass out of here.
That was some labor wave right there. I love it. How can it sound so commie and so bad at the same time? Stalin loved tractors. We need more tractors. Yeah, see? You guys, the world trashes Stalin, but everybody who hates a tractor, come on.
Yeah. If someone said I could have a tractor right now, I'd take it.
Yeah.
Take it for a spin.
At some point, I'm going to do my Stalin Roosevelt episode, but
we'll get there.
There's
too much to cover right now. Also, just like a quick, since we're talking about deceiving the public, just so that everyone remembers, we're not talking about all the things that we talked about in school, obviously, because you already learned that shit. But just so that everyone remembers, Roosevelt had polio the entire time he was president, and they were acting as if he didn't have polio and lied to the public and to the press. Well, I feel like the press and the public were willfully deceived for 12 years about him being not completely, but mostly disabled.
Mostly unable to walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk much about before I take the switch. I just want to say real quick, if you're on this YouTube live right now and you have not subscribed to Queer POTUS, channel, please go down there and click the subscribe button. Please do it. I see that there's 23 people here now, so I want to make sure that I get subs. So please click the subscribe button if you haven't yet, because I'm getting very close to 1,000, and that's a huge milestone. You start getting paid when you have 1,000. You get 10 cents a year if you have 1,000 subscribers.
Really?
So I want to get that. I want to get that dime with that sweet FDR portrait on it.
FDR money. Yeah.
So subscribe right now. Okay.
Beautiful tractors. We have the best tractors in America. All right.
Yeah. So FDR
for you,
was did suffer from the disease polio, and it's kind of interesting because in some of the books I read about FDR, so he was a child of privilege. He had a lot of money. His mother was a young woman who married a very old man, a very old rich man.
Mm-hmm. She was educated overseas. She had been educated in other countries as a young woman.
Sarah Roosevelt was a very, very capable woman, but like many women of her age, rather than strike out on her own and for a career, she decided to have a baby and make that baby everything that she couldn't be. And through Franklin Roosevelt, she was able to accomplish a lot in the world. So she has this baby with James Roosevelt. James Roosevelt dies because he's very old when Franklin's very young, and she pours all of her, hopes and dreams and a lot of her weird complexes into Franklin Roosevelt. And thank you, Silver AG11, for smashing that sub button. Don't forget to click the bell for notifications. So Franklin Roosevelt is raised in this extremely rarefied atmosphere where he is protected from interacting with anything in the world that might expose him to disease. And some biographers say that it was because he was so coddled and protected from the world that he became very susceptible to disease. He fell sick very easily. And so one day he was out on a boat ride with his family, and he jumped in the water, and it was kind of cold, and he got very, very sick. He got a really bad fever, and the diagnosis ended up being polio. And it was right after he had run for vice president in 1920. In the election of 1920, Roosevelt was the Democratic vice presidential candidate. That ticket lost to Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge, and he went home and got polio. And according to the biography I read, it said he couldn't have picked a better time to get polio because the Democrats were completely in the wilderness for the entire decade of the 20s. So there he is in the 20s, building himself back up. He actually purchases a facility in Georgia called Warm Springs, which becomes this place where people with polio can go and interact and help each other, and they can swim in these warm spring pools, and it's very therapeutic. And he goes there every year, even while he's president, to visit with the folks who are suffering from polio. So that's one of my favorite things about Roosevelt, is the fact that he had a disability. He was a powerful person despite it, and that he never forgot the other people who suffered from polio too. And I think that did give him an ability to understand what suffering was, that made him a better leader, even if he ignored suffering in so many ways. What do you think?
What do I think about him ignoring the suffering?
Or no, I said he could commiserate with people. I thought he could understand suffering, even if he ignored it a lot of times.
So FDR was a very, very privileged individual, and definitely, kind of pompous, kind of arrogant. And it's said that polio definitely brought him down to the abilities. Not to the abilities, but to understand people who weren't given everything in life. He was incredibly angry. For 3 years, he said he would walk. He never said he wouldn't walk in the 3 years of him trying to figure out what was going through with his body, what was happening with the paralysis. The polio really helped him understand what a lot of other people went through. He was hanging around the polio training center, which he eventually bought.
Warm Springs.
Thank you, Warm Springs, which was a really helpful place for him to meet and talk with other people who weren't going to be immediately judged or immediately judge him for being in a wheelchair. And this really, in my opinion, allows him to help us brave through the storm of World War II. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself is written in day of. That speech was mostly written by Eleanor, but there were a lot of edits made by Franklin, and I don't think he would have at all been that kind of person, or even really would have been a type of person who could be electable without the humbling experience of polio. And I think that was actually a really, really important part of his presidency, and helps bring him back down to earth with the rest of us.
Yeah, it was very painful for FDR to stand. He could stand with leg braces, and he had to keep his hand. He had to either be helped or keep his hands on a rostrum or on something to stabilize himself. But nonetheless, he was able to. I was about to say something kind of cringy. He was able to project an image of strength despite being disabled. That's wrong. But here's a clip of FDR giving a speech.
Is he gripping the sides?
Take a look. Yeah, you can see how he grips the sides. And look how he very successfully, I would say, projects the image of a person who is not encumbered with polio as he stands at the rostrum of the Senate.
They're gonna get it.
Optimism from across the Atlantic. President Roosevelt addresses Congress.
They will understand now
the
enormity of their miscalculation. That the Nazis would always have the advantage of superior air power, as they did when they bombed Warsaw and Rotterdam and London and Coventry. that superiority has gone
See?
forever. Yes.
Forever.
See the hands?
Wait, let me get it in
Holding on.
shot. There we go.
We believe that the Nazis and the fascists have asked for it, and they're going to get it.
That
It
is
was
so
not.
Churchill.
It was not widely known at the time that he had polio. No, that was the thing. The media kept it from everyone. There were, even on his inauguration day, there were ramps so that he could roll himself up before staggering around and doing his best to walk and use others as aid.
Yeah. I thought it was more like an open secret type thing where it was like, I mean, people, how could you not have known?
I think
that he
after a
had
while,
polio?
it was an open secret.
Because it was it was known that he had polio. It wasn't known to what extent he was paralyzed.
I don't know if that was known in the first two elections, though. At least in the first election, I don't think anyone knew that he was disabled at all.
But I think over time, I mean, people found out. Because, I mean, he did say, he told the photographers never to take a photo of him getting in and out of a car or getting out of a chair. But you know, you can see him in the photos. And
Media's
I mean,
never treated a president better.
You know, he's walking like this, and you'd have to ask yourself, why is the president walking that way? If you saw the president, and he was not the kind of president who hid in the White House and never showed up. I mean, he was always out among the people, talking to people and doing things. So people must have known to some degree that, you know, he had trouble walking. But I mean, you know,
it is a big deal if it takes you two hands to hold a drink, though. Let's be real. I mean, come on.
Okay. All right. That's like some boomer anti-Trumpism coming in here. He's an orange man. Okay. So it's about 9:37. We're getting close to the end of the podcast. Maybe we could open just up for a few more questions. Does anybody have any more questions about FDR that they wanted to ask before we wrap this up with our ranking?
Oh, ranking. I don't even know what I'm going to do.
Speaking of Rankin, have y'all heard of Jeanette Rankin, the only congressperson to vote against World War II?
What a segue.
Okay, anyway. Any questions about FDR?
What do you think is FDR's relevance today given the coronavirus? His relevance? I think
he would have been at risk.
I think right now, if we didn't have FDR and know what that kind of supreme executive power can do to someone, and if we had never seen Star Wars before, we'd be nervous giving, hopefully, Joe Biden that much power to fix the nation and fix what's going on, because no man is that much better than others. As Nietzsche once said, I'm going to butcher this because it's really abridged. No one with the personality of a leader is properly fit for leadership. He's not. He would have definitely done his best at this time, but he for sure would have taken like the authoritarian route. What do you think, Johnny?
Well, I do think there's things to learn from FDR. I think FDR shows us, you know, many of us want to see our system change. And so for those of us who really want to see the capitalist system overthrown and a new system of government based on equity to be, you know, enacted in our country, FDR is not, you know, the kind of person who we want to look to because that wasn't FDR's goal. But I think what FDR does show us is that if we're not trying to overthrow the system completely, but work within the system that we already have, that it is possible to make changes for the better. And it is possible to introduce people to the idea of socialism that way, in a way that's less threatening, I guess.
There's No, you go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt like that.
And he kind of shows us that he also shows us what the shortcomings of that is, because although FDR had things like Social Security that lasted and continue to last this day, most of the programs that FDR put into place, although they lasted longer than any other socialist programs America has ever had, they were eventually stripped away, and America went back to its former 1920s laissez-faire perspective with the addition of neoliberalism, unfortunately.
I do want to talk about that in a second, talk about like him giving jobs to people and taking them away in just a second. I do want to answer Scarlet Turtle's thing. Term limits were put in directly after him. So 1947 is when that was put in. That was a 22nd Amendment, and that was done during Harry S. Truman, who was put into government because obviously Roosevelt was going to die. So they took away, and I kid you not, the vice president that he had the whole time, who was a communist sympathizer.
Not the whole time.
Not the whole time?
No, he had John S. Garner for the first 8 years. Then he had Henry Wallace. And Henry Wallace was, let's just say, he thought a lot of things Stalin was doing made sense. And so, he was considered, I was just watching a William F. Buckley thing where they were talking about Henry Wallace, and William F. Buckley was calling Henry Wallace like a Stalin, basically. You know, he's like, he was Stalin. You would have had Stalin be our president in the form of Henry Wallace, but they basically elbowed him out of the convention and put Harry Truman on the bill because he was a little more down to earth
and was definitely willing to drop a bomb.
By their definition. We didn't even talk about the bomb.
We don't have time for the bomb.
FDR created the biggest bomb ever, guys. FDR is the father of the military-industrial complex and the father of the atom bomb.
He asked a bunch of really, really nice ladies to pull some levers and press some buttons. They had no idea that they were going to create one of the most destructive and deadly things that mankind has ever created. But I want to talk really quickly about what you were just saying about giving jobs to people. I think there was one thing that you were talking about. We could talk about his wife and his girlfriends in a second. Or you want to do that right now? Go for it.
Lorena Hickok. She was a reporter who was assigned to Eleanor Roosevelt. She ended up quitting because she was like, I cannot be an objective reporter when I am reporting on this beautiful, wonderful woman, Eleanor Roosevelt. And they traveled together. They exchanged letters together. And I'm going to break historical consensus convention and just say they were hooking up. I don't.
She's not the only one, though.
Yeah, for sure.
FDR actually was the architect behind Eleanor's separate house where her and her two friends would often live and hang. But one thing that I did want to say,
they didn't fuck, so anyway,
they definitely fucked. Why wouldn't you fuck?
No, I'm saying FDR and Eleanor didn't have sex after she had the children, and she found out he was having an affair with
his secretary and with that other woman.
Yeah, she never slept with him again. Missy LeHand and
Suckley.
Lucy Mercer.
Lucy Mercer Suckley.
Who FDR spent his last days with Lucy Mercer, actually, not with Eleanor.
Yep. That was set up by Eleanor's daughter. Anyway, Johnny, you have a little bit of information on the jobs, how long the job security of those who were given jobs were for. There's a better way of saying that in the English language, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I don't actually. I didn't understand that at all.
Okay. Some people were only hired for a small amount of time. They were given these government jobs of farming and fixing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Probably not, actually. I don't know a ton about it. But here's an interesting one. The Yalta Conference was his compromise with Stalin, his awareness that the Soviets could fight all the way to Paris and then some. I mean, we collaborated with the Soviets despite our ideological disagreements with them because we were trying to put down the Nazis. And they say that FDR and Stalin had a much better kind of understanding. I'm actually reading a really good book right now about Stalin and Europe. And it turns out that Stalin was not quite the voracious conqueror of Europe that he was painted as, that he actually had a more balanced sort of view of the post-war order that didn't include I mean, it included a heavy Soviet hand in Eastern Bloc countries, but he didn't have this like design on taking over all of Europe.
One thing that I do want to say about the relationship between FDR and Stalin is that because FDR and Churchill had been speaking for so long, Churchill believed that FDR was his and his only. So when they had entered into agreements with Stalin, FDR had actually trended more towards Stalin and acting and being more with Stalin and asking for, what he said, conceding a lot to Italy and to Stalin, much to Churchill's chagrin. So their relationship was really interesting, FDR's and Stalin's.
Well, you got to remember too that Churchill was not a head of state. He was lower ranking than FDR and Stalin, and he actually got voted out of office not long after the war. And so Churchill was basically powerless. Like when he was going to the Yalta conference, he was the least powerful person there. So he was kind of just like, they were like, bring him, whatever. But they treated him like an accessory in a lot of ways. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you were talking about the military industrial complex. I just wanted to say that the military originally only had 189,000 soldiers in the army before Roosevelt took office. And then he put in over 12 million new soldiers.
Right on. Yeah. Again, FDR built the atom bomb. He ushered in the nuclear age, even though he wasn't the one who made that decision. Ultimately, he still built the bomb. He exploded the military budget. I think he put more than half of he got more than half of the American budget committed to military expenditure. So he, far from being the Bernie Sanders figure that we'd like to think he was actually a huge all-out militarist, American hegemonist, and a warrior for capitalism. So that brings us to the important moment of the podcast.
Oh man, I'm not ready for this.
When we decide how should history remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Should history remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt as a great president or a total failure? Did he suck? Did he suck? But not so much that
every president sucks.
Yeah. Did he suck, but not so much that he deserves a high ranking? Or was he so terrible that he left his country a smoldering pile of poop on someone's porch and ran while running away with his pants around his ankles? That's definitely is a high.
I don't ever. No, we're a little different in this because you know more about history than me, but not in this point, but the next ones that I'm going to make. No, I'm not going to say. Okay. I'm not one to say that Hitler had any good ideas. I'm not one to talk about Stalin or say what he had going for him. You know a lot more about Stalin than I do. I think that there was so much wrong and so much done bad about FDR. It's really, really hard to see him. I know it's a bad way to start a sentence. It's really, really hard to see him as anyone other than someone who put U.S. citizens in internment camps, lied to the public over and over again, helped only white people and large businesses at the end of the day. That's really what he stood for, and that's really what he did. He was a progressive, barely. He helped. There was a difference in the expectation of the government before Roosevelt. No one really thought that the government can help them, but also that might have been more Teddy Roosevelt. But anyway, after FDR, people expected that if something goes wrong, the government should intervene. And shouldn't it? Isn't that the whole point of having like adults that we hire to go do shit for us? If something's wrong, go fix it. What the fuck else are you people doing? But he did so much wrong that it's really going to be hard for me to rate him. First of all, he's not going above a 5. But it's going to be hard for me to rate him high at all.
Okay.
What about you, Johnny?
So part of me wants to give him a 10 because comparing him to other presidents, I can't think of a president who did more, social programs and did more like stuff that. That on that side of things, I want to give him a very high ranking. But another part of me says, well, but wasn't he kind of just like this guy who just like plagued the American people for 12 years, who wouldn't go away, who like was essentially a dictator, who became president for life and exploded the military industrial complex and mostly gave people fake jobs. And then the other part of me says, but he boosted the
economy.
He boosted the country's like morale at a time when it was
Heavily.
extremely low.
It was unbelievably low.
Which is something I often hear people say about Ronald Reagan, is that they say Ronald Reagan boosted American confidence after the disastrous 1970s. And it's like, I don't want to concede that point. And I feel like I have to if I concede the point that FDR boosted American morale. But ultimately, I have to say that, like, if FDR had been replaced by Henry Wallace, maybe I would say that FDR was a terrible president because Henry Wallace would have been much better and would have done a much more humane like presidency. But because we don't have that, and because we have so many terrible laissez-faire, I don't give a crap presidents in our history, I'm going to have to give FDR a higher ranking. And I don't like him, but
I'm not going to speak in this house.
I'm going to give him straight up. I'm going to give him I'll give him a 7. I definitely think he's at least the second best president. After
really, right before I give him a number, I do want to say thank you so much for everyone who's been participating in the chat. We've had a lot of people, and it's been a lot of fun. So please join us next time. We will be doing someone who I'm not going to say because it's Johnny's turn to say, I believe, but we already know who it is. But thank you so much for everyone coming and commenting and talking and asking questions. I don't know. I was really leaning towards giving him a 4. I think he's better than some people for sure. But in contrast with what Sebastian was saying, who's got a dope ass last name, if that's his actual last name, I really think that what he did was so bad and so rough for America that we're still dealing with it today, with the sentiments on the military, the sentiments towards capitalism, towards the kind of society that we think we should have, towards how executives think that they should act. All of these problems stem from how he acted, and in turn stem from how his wife's uncle, who's also related to him because he fucked in the family, sort of, Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh yeah, he kept things in the family for sure.
He keeps things in the family.
Yeah.
I think really I would give him more of a D+. I really think a lot of things going forward is a lot of people saying, hey, this is what FDR did and this is what I can do. And I think that's a real problem.
So
give him a 4 out of 10.
All right. So again, I want to remind everybody to please, if you have not subscribed to Queer POTUS YouTube channel, please do. And also, if you could, so I'm going to leave that link in the chat right now, real quick. I'm also going to leave a link to another YouTube channel that I'm helping to launch right now.
Yes, guys, please.
It's called Comedy Potluck.
This is a comedy show. It's done once a month in Washington, D.C., but since since the COVID's here, we're all doing it online.
The COVID. So please sub to this. You don't have to even watch it. We just need some subs to get us off the ground here. So that's the second link I'm giving you.
But also, if you're interested in alternative comedy, it's the best shit out there.
And lastly, yeah, it's an amazing channel, but I'm just saying it's new. So get in on the ground level there. And the last thing I want to do is to close out our broadcast today and say, yeah, I sell out. You bet your ass I sell out. I'm a warrior for capitalism. I'm a capitalist to my bones.
It's from fucking Langdon.
Yeah. It's kind of like, so in a lot of ways, I kind of felt almost like he was less Bernie Sanders and more Elizabeth Warren because he was a capitalist to his bones. But let's check out, just to close out the podcast here, just a little bit of the FDR charm.
Don't cry when any president dies,
This
by the
is
way.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt running for president in 1944 He's going to be dead in like 6 months. He's like a shell of his former self. He's basically a dead body. So if you think the two men who are running for president now are like inadequate, this guy was basically like a walking corpse.
If you cringe from Joe not being able to finish a sentence.
And everybody knew that he was a walking corpse. And they were like, I can't believe he's running again. And all FDR did was this one thing that we're going to watch. And this basically said to the American public, well, sounds like he's got his wits about him. Let's give him another term. And here it is.
These Republican leaders have not been content with attacks on me or on my wife or on my sons. No, not content with that. They now include my little dog, Fala.
Is that Truman to his right?
Well, of course, I don't resent attacks, and my family don't resent attacks. But Fala does resent it.
There you go. That got him elected to another term.
That is
all right,
true.
folks.
No, it's
thanks
not.
for coming, and we will see you next time when we.
Fala
there's Fala.
And being a Scotty, as soon as he learned that the Republican fiction writers in Congress and out had concocted a story that I'd left him behind on an Aleutian island and had sent a destroyer back to find it at a cost to the taxpayers of $2 or $3 or
it is a
$8
really cute
or
dog.
$20 million.
Yeah.
His Scotch soul was furious.
Look at his face.
Yeah, he's dying, but he just gets through this and he wins.
He has not been the same dog since.
He's saying all this without any emotion, which actually, ironically, makes it way funnier because it's deadpan.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't look like there's anyone in there.
I know, it's crazy. All right, so the last thing, Connor, we don't know when the next broadcast is going to be because we spend a lot more time on these now than we used to. So we kind of we'll let you know when the next one will be. Maybe it'll be in a month or so, or at least in a month. But Connor, who's the next president?
Guys, we are so excited to announce that we will be doing one of America's prominent monarchs, John Adams.
John Adams.
One of the least democratic of all founding fathers, if not presidents. It'll be great to rip into him.
And there's going to be plenty of Paul Giamatti, so make sure you come
There's
out.
There's going to be plenty of Paul Giamatti. We
should just do Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
Paul Giamatti sucks. All right. Thanks, y'all, for coming out today, and thanks for coming to the first YouTube Live. We will see you probably a month from now when we talk about John and Abigail Adams. Bye, everybody.